You're with The Good Word, where it's that time in the show when we bring on someone well-known to talk about a book they love. Today's guest has written more than 90 books, and her latest publication is the New Zealand Barbecue Book. She herself is as central an influence on our cooking. She's the patron saint of the New Zealand kitchen. I'm really pleased to welcome Alison Holst. Hi, Alison. Welcome to the show.
Emily, thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Please take a seat. So what's the book you brought in to talk about?
Well, it's called A Girl of the Limberlost by Jean Stratton Porter.
How did you come across it?
It's a book I first read when I was about 14 in an aunt's house. I had nothing to read and I started on this book, which I think must have been written about 50 years before that. And I was fascinated by it. And I didn't think about it for years. And in the last year, I've just started thinking about it again. So when I went to America earlier this year, I went to a bookshop and they said, oh, that book's just been reprinted twice in the last few years.
Interesting.
Yes, very interesting.
I wonder why it's come back into vogue, because it's very like Anne of Green Gables or Little Women. It's sort of, you can tell that it really appeals to that sort of developing female sensibility.
Yes,
isn't it?
I think it's been a very popular book over the years, tucked away in people's... Well, not in America, not in New Zealand, but in America.
It's set in the Limberlost,
yes,
which is an extraordinary
Indiana.
natural world. Yeah.
Yes, and I wanted to, you know, I'd read that when I was 14, 12, 14, and I thought about it a lot more, and it's marshy, it was, and a forest, and there was oil sort of bubbling up through it. And Jean Stratton Porter lived in the Limberlost as she was a young married woman.
She writes about nature in an incredibly impassioned way, doesn't she?
She does.
They're beautiful descriptions, and the plot turns on the natural world, really.
Well, the heroine, who needed badly to make some money so that she could go to further her education, did it by catching moths. Now, as a New Zealand youngster, I thought that a moth was a little thing. These moths were the size of this book, and they were all sorts of colours, and they were worth a lot of money to the young girl who caught them and sold them, and that was how she afforded her schooling. She's
such a wonderful central character because she's so spirited, and it did remind me of Jo in Little Women and the need that she's got to overcome her circumstances, and then of course she becomes a teacher at the end too, as Jo does. But it's such a page turner. There are reversals every few pages.
Well, I've read it twice in the last month and enjoyed it just as much the second time as the first.
I love that there's a very difficult relationship between the girl and her mother.
Yes.
And perhaps you could talk a little bit about that. Did you feel your sympathies shifting as the book goes on?
Well, I found it very interesting because I couldn't work out why she was so why the mother was so mean to her daughter. And then I realised it was because her husband had died. In this oily swamp, and the young wife had to watch, and she was very pregnant with the girl, and she couldn't rescue her husband, and she always felt that it was the daughter's fault that her husband had been killed.
It's brilliant the way that has that sort of ominous side of the swamp at the background for this incredibly charming, good-natured story with wonderful characters. Well, thank you very much for bringing it in.
It's been a pleasure coming, and I was delighted to read the book again.
Good, good. I hope many people do. Alison Holst's favourite book was Girl of the Limberlost by Jean Stratton Porter, published by the Indiana University Press. And now a visit to this week's book club, one that specialises in New Zealand fiction.
It's like being a bridesmaid. That's right.
When I found Rachel's posting on the literary website, it just sounded like the coolest one there. In the genre was really interesting. I just thought it was quite cool as well. I'm quite interested in it. I thought, oh yeah.
Because there were quite a lot of book groups listed, weren't there?
Yes, I read
for Auckland. And did you read them all? And this was like your favourite? Is that how it worked for you guys? This was your favourite one, like this appeals.
It did stand out.
Yeah.
From my point of view, obviously being not from New Zealand, only moving here a few months ago, it was really appealing to me because it was an opportunity to sort of almost get to know a bit of New Zealand culture through the books that we were going to read.
People just emailed and then they came along, and it just worked, luckily.
We haven't had any freaks yet that we've had to expel.
It was a description of you made us all want to join.
I'm fantastic. I think I originally thought it would be a cool idea because you only have limited time to read, and also in terms of what I'm going to put my money behind when I'm buying books. I thought, why not buy New Zealand books and why not support New Zealand books? And I also think it's interesting that some of my friends and things have sort of had the response, God, just Kiwi books, like it's really limiting. But I think it's not at all, and it's not like every New Zealand book is the same. There's so much variety in there, and they're brilliant novels. It's not like we're reading something that's substandard or anything. They're really good books.
So I like it that we've decided to focus on authors who've published more recently, so that it kind of keeps us current with the literature coming out, and we can support new authors or authors who are trying to make their name.
If we suggested sort of the classics of New Zealand literature, we've probably read them in high school and things anyway, or chances are people have, so it's nice to, if you're keeping with current books, then people won't have read them.
I did want to read more New Zealand literature. I did a lot at uni and studied writing with people like Witi Humara, and it's good to read more current New Zealand authors and see what they're doing as well, like Emily Perkins. I found her really inspiring, and Eleanor Catton, who was at the Readers and Writers Festival, and she's like my age as well, and seeing a New Zealander who's, done something I'd like to do was really cool.
I guess an added bonus too of reading New Zealand stuff is that obviously we're in New Zealand, so we potentially can sort of go to things like the Readers and Writers Festival and see those authors live and hear them talk about their books or read from their books or that sort of thing.
We didn't enjoy one book.
Don't. Oh! We can't. I don't think we should. She's the host of the show. We just forget it. You can. Oh, sorry. You can say we didn't like a book, just don't name it.
We didn't like a book, but we won't name it. Yeah, that sounds fair.
Yeah. Out of respect for the author who we might bump into at the supermarket.
After the break, Finlay Macdonald goes on the trail of another famous New Zealand book.